Hey everyone, welcome to a new episode of Startup Talks. We're trying something new, answering the questions founders actually ask. Today's one of the most common: how much equity should you give a co-founder? Let's get into it. First thing to understand, this is one of the most expensive decisions you make early and also one of the most emotional because it ties money to friendship.
And people get it wrong because it feels like a friendship conversation, not a business one.
Right, and the rule is settle it before you build anything. Redoing ownership while the company is already running ends in a breakup something like 90% of the time.
When does it actually come up, though? Because I don't think it's just once.
It's 4 moments. At founding, how you split on day 1, when a third co-founder joins later and you have to carve from an already divided pie, when your first key hire asks for equity, and at your first funding round, when dilution kicks in and the old unfairness comes right back.
So the same fight 4 times with higher stakes each time.
Exactly. And there's a book, The Founder's Dilemmas, by Noam Wasserman, whose research basically says co-founder disputes are a top reason startups die early. So this isn't dry legal admin. It's how the story usually ends. Let me throw out the short version, then we dig in. There's no fixed number, but the data's drifting toward equal. In 2024, about 46% of 2-person teams split 50-50, up from 31.5% back in 2015.
So equal is winning. Is equal right?
Equal is the right default, but only when the contributions are actually equal. More than half of teams still split unequally, and that's completely fine. But here's the real point. The percentage matters less than vesting.
Okay, you said the magic word. Explain vesting because not everyone knows it.
Vesting means you earn your share over time instead of getting it all at once. On paper, the share is allocated to you up front, but the company can buy back the part you haven't earned yet if you leave early. You stick around and work, your share accrues. You walk early, the unearned chunk goes back to the company.
So it's a slow reveal. The share is technically yours, it just hasn't fully developed yet.
Like a progressive JPEG, yeah. And the standard is 4 years with a 1-year cliff. Leave inside the first year, you get nothing. Hit the 1-year mark, you get 25% at once, then it drips in monthly after that.
Why 4 years? That feels arbitrary.
Because a startup's potential barely shows before then. Oscar Hartman, he's built a pile of companies, says it often takes 7 years, sometimes 10. 1 year tells you nothing. 4 is enough for the truth to come out.
Assuming you even survive that long.
Right. This is all for the companies that make it past the first 6 months, the valley of death, where 95% just close. Different rules in that window. But if you survive it, the split is a 1-day decision. The vesting is what protects you for 4 years. Let me put the citiable numbers in one place. Equal splits went from 31.5% in 2015 to 46% in 2024. Still, over half of teams split unequally. Unequal is normal, not a red flag.
And the vesting standard again?
4 years, 1-year cliff, then a 48th of the share per month. Being the CEO, the final decision role, is usually worth an extra 5 to 15%. And a part-time co-founder gets roughly 50 to 70% of what a full-timer gets.
What actually moves the number up or down?
3 things: risk taken, idea versus execution, and full-time versus not. Quick tour of the types because people ask. The classic is time-based. The share just accrues evenly over the term.
And the cliff is the threshold you mentioned.
Right. Nothing vests before the anniversary. Then a quarter lands at once. That's your protection against someone joining for 3 months and grabbing a chunk. Then there's milestone-based. You vest by hitting goals. Product launch, revenue, around.
Honestly, I think a milestone is better than pure time-based. If someone owns the e-commerce site and there's a clear metric, you can actually measure the contribution.
When you can define it, sure. But that's the catch. What counts as launch? Which revenue number? 100,000? A million? And what if you pivot and the goalposts move?
Yeah, it's clean only when the person's job maps to one binary outcome. The site works or it doesn't.
Then there's hybrid, part by time, part by milestone, and acceleration, which is about what happens to your unvested share if the company gets sold. Single trigger vests on the sale itself. Double trigger only vests if they also let you go after the sale.
And investors prefer double trigger.
They do. They don't want to pay out unvested equity to someone who's going to stick around anyway. Here's the trap. 50-50 works in exactly one case, when the contributions are truly equal, both full-time, equal risk, both pulling. The problem is, on day one equal feels fairest, and a year later, reality almost always diverges.
And nobody says anything, the resentment just builds.
Silently. One person's full-time, the other's part-time, same share. One brought the idea or the IP, the other showed up to something finished. One quit their job and took a loan, the other hedged. Or the pace just split. Somebody burned out, somebody accelerated, but the shares are frozen at day one.
And with 50-50, there's no tiebreaker. You deadlock.
That's the killer. Every big decision, bringing in a third founder, raising, needs both of you, and you can stall the whole company. That's why Y Combinator's advice is to build in a little asymmetry. At least give the CEO an extra 5 to 15%.
Not out of greed.
No, so someone has the final word when you're stuck. New term worth introducing, moonlighting. That's a co-founder working on the startup part-time, hasn't quit their job, lower risk because they've got a salary on the side.
And the benchmark is that 50 to 70% of a full-timer's share.
Right. Less time, less risk, less equity. And a healthy pattern is to give the smaller share now, and agree it grows when they go full-time. Tie it to a milestone in the agreement.
I'd add one caveat though, that discount only makes sense if the part-timer is replaceable. If they're a critical specialist, say someone doing nuclear fusion that is the core of the startup, you're not finding that on Fiverr.
So they might deserve more, even a controlling stake.
Because nothing moves without them. The flip side is people who think their experience is exceptional when it's a $20 strategy deck. That's only truly exceptional when they also put their own money in. Otherwise, it's an advisor role, not a co-founder one.
Let me tell the story you see on the forums over and over. Two friends start a company, split 50-50 in the excitement, and skip vesting. We're friends. Why the formalities?
I already don't like where this is going.
4 months in, one of them loses interest or gets an offer they can't refuse or just falls out and leaves. On paper, he still owns half the company. The other guy carries the whole product alone for the next 2-3 years.
And the dead weight just sits there owning half.
Then the first round comes. The investor opens the cap table, that's the sheet showing who owns what, and sees a dead 50% stake held by a guy who vanished. That's called dead equity. A share that creates nothing but hangs on the company.
And investors hate that.
They walk or they demand you clean up the cap table first, and buying the guy out is nearly impossible. He doesn't have to sell, and he can name any price, because he knows the round won't close without him.
All of which a one-line cliff would have prevented.
Completely. Left at month 4. Before the cliff? 0. The share stays whole in the company. 1 clause versus 2 years of agony.
This actually reminds me of a story Oscar Hartman tells. He's on a board, and the day before a new round gets announced, one of the founders comes to him saying things are going badly and offers to buy his stake.
Using the inside knowledge that the round's about to make that stake way more valuable.
Exactly. Hartman calls it out, and the guy just shrugs. It's business. In some places, there's no protection against that move at all.
Which is the whole argument for setting the rules before the conflict, not after. A lot of our listeners are founders in Germany, so the logic is the same, but the mechanics of setting it up are different from the US.
Different how?
In the US, the classic is a C corporation, often in Delaware. Founders get restricted stock with reverse vesting right at incorporation. It's standardized, there are templates, vesting's basically out of the box.
And in Germany?
2 startup forms. A GmbH, limited liability, needs 25,000 euros of share capital, half of it paid in at founding. Or a UG, the mini GmbH, which starts from €1 but has to bank a quarter of its profit until it reaches 25,000 and converts.
I'll warn people on the UG though. There's the GG. There's a real reputation cost. Some German companies just won't deal with the UG. I've seen that firsthand.
Good caveat. And the big legal difference, German shares aren't stock, they're Geschäftsanteil. There's no off-the-shelf restricted stock mechanism. Any transfer of shares needs a notary. That's paragraph 15 of the GmbH law. And it's paid, scales with valuation, and slow.
So clawing back an unvested share is harder there.
Harder and pricier than the US. So in Germany, you do vesting contractually, a separate agreement, not through automatic share buyback like Delaware, which means the American template does not drop in one-to-one. Talk to a corporate lawyer.
And that separate agreement has a name.
The Gesellschaftervereinbarung, the shareholders' agreement. It sits alongside the articles, and it's where you put vesting, lever terms, drag along and tag along. That's joint sale rights when an investor exits. First refusal, non-compete, all of it.
And the heart of it?
Good lever, bad lever. Good lever, illness, redundancy, and agreed exit. Your unvested shares get bought back at a fairer, market-ish price. Bad lever, you breached the contract, left too early, got removed for cause, buyback at nominal value, and you lose the unvested part, sometimes even part of what you'd vested.
So German vesting is really just an obligation to sell your share when you leave.
At a price that depends on how much vested and which kind of lever you are. And the nice part, the shareholders' agreement usually doesn't need a notary, unlike the articles or the actual share transfer. You can sign it between yourselves.
But the final transfer still hits the notary.
It does. So, same takeaway. Set it up with a lawyer before there's a conflict, not after. Germany has its quirks, but it doesn't really limit you. You just have to write vesting and the cliff into a contract instead of getting them out of the box.
I want to widen the lens to close. In the AI era, human capital has shot up in value relative to money. These tiny companies hitting millions in a year, sometimes hundreds of millions in months, they're not built on financial investment. They're built on talent. And the pool of free specialists has gotten thin.
So people get poached constantly.
Constantly. A founder shows up to the industry already running their own startup, and a big corporation just buys them out. The former CEO becomes a regular engineer. And that's exactly when the share transfer mechanism fires. For a technical person who never cared about the business side, the US ecosystem handles all this. Elsewhere it doesn't.
Which loops us right back. In Germany especially, if you don't sort equity and the redistribution mechanism in advance, you can lose the company fast when a key person leaves, even with big money in the bank.
And a critical specialist being critical doesn't mean unlimited power. Clear boundaries are insurance for everyone, all sides.
That's the answer. Argue about the split for one day. Set up vesting for years. Thanks for listening and see you in the next episode of Startup Talks.